Welcome to the Israel Reality Podcast. Today we will be speaking with Rabbi Micha Odenheimer, the founder of Tevel B, an organization that empowers rural communities in crisis to combat poverty and achieve self-sufficiency without losing their cultural integrity. In this rich conversation, we explore the systemic challenges that have disrupted subsistence farming, from climate change to deforestation, and the transformative methods Tevel B uses to help villages grow food, access health care, and build sustainable futures. Rabbi Odenheimer also shares his thoughts on Israeli topics like judicial reform, the country's healthcare system, and global concerns such as the pharmaceutical industry's role in research, wealth inequality, and the evolving relationship between governments, corporations, and communities. If you enjoy this episode, please comment, subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Your support helps us reach more people with these meaningful stories and conversations. Get ready for an inspiring discussion filled with insights on humanity's potential for redemption, creativity, and connection in a rapidly changing world.
So you started an organization that goes to villages, and you're non-colonial. You're not there to convince them to become first world or second world.
We're trying to help them be able to stay where they are, because the source of like all the major extreme poverty, and most of it is from these villages were for many years like subsistent farming. They were just like growing during the rainy season. And
when you say many years, like centuries, thousands of years.
Yeah, I don't know, centuries. It depends.
Okay.
Villages have moved around a bit. They're not all there for thousands of years, but basically, the way of life has been going on for thousands of years, more or less. I mean, but they can't grow enough food anymore to feed themselves. So
things have changed.
Things have changed.
Like what changed? Because of climate?
First of all, population growth.
Oh, they could.
Because vaccinations and different things like that, and the children used to die much more. First of all, they were also always very, very poor, these villages. But population growth and cutting down the forests, because they got a lot of feed for their animals from the forest, and now a lot of the forests are cut down, a lot of environmental, depredation. And because the forests are cut down, there's also more erosion, so the soil is less fertile, all kinds of things. But they're just not supporting themselves anymore. I mean, if you go to a village in Nepal, for example, where we started out, then you'd ask a village, how many months can you eat? Meaning, how many months can you eat from what you grow? And some would say 5 months, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, maybe 8 months. That's the most. And therefore they're pulled into all kinds of, into slums and into terrible work situations. And
slums in the villages?
No, slums
in
the
cities.
Cities. And so we go in there and we have a whole methodology for trying to help them move from just growing for subsistence, where they're not really making it anymore, to growing enough so that they can sell in local markets. And also people there know that there's such a thing now as medical care. They know there's such a thing as education. They don't have the money for it. So what we try to do is to get them into a situation where they have enough to eat all year round. People are, growing enough food, and they sell it, and they have money for school and for doctors, and not doctors, but medicine and clinics, and
So
that's what we do.
Okay, it's not like the reason I asked that thing about colonialism and stuff is because I heard a podcast about somebody from National Geographic who goes around the world and looks at these kinds of, probably not super impoverished places, and talks about it from almost like an evolutionary biologist, saying, well, they survived for all the hundreds of thousands of years, and now they're here, and as if there's some sort of integrity and coherence to their current way of being, but poverty is not.
Look, we would never work in a village unless it was in crisis. Unless it was really
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there are maybe he's talking about hunter-gatherer groups. That's a bit different.
I don't know.
And certainly, like I said, what we're trying to do is enable them to stay
where they are.
Stay where they are.
Mushrooms are good. Have you gone into mushrooms at all?
A little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mushrooms. Because
We have
like
done mushrooms.
I heard one guy that went through. I think he was like a Cornell mushroom man, and he went to Haiti, and he impressed them because he was growing mushroom on all their garbage. They have they have a lot of garbage there. At least when I was there when I was 7 in Haiti.
Really?
Yeah, my father was he was the AMA representative for abortion, so we went around to different countries and.
Your dad was a doctor?
Yeah.
Oh.
And in L.A.
Oh, my dad was also a doctor in L.A.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
What did he? What kind of doctor?
He was an orthopedic surgeon.
Orthopedic surgeon.
What was
so
your
my dad was a psychiatrist.
Oh. What does that have to do with abortion?
Abortion. So that he and his legal counterpart wrote the first laws allowing therapeutic abortion in America, basically. And they made it so that you had to get 3 psychiatrists to sign on.
Oh wow!
That was the deal. And
so he drummed up some work for psychiatrists.
And so we went. So he went around to different countries, and he gave a lecture at Yale. I was like so impressed. Wow, he gave a lecture at Yale. and that was it. So well before Roe. Yeah. So there was a lot of garbage. I remember. There's like the smell of garbage was everywhere. Sewage, open sewage.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still that way, I guess, or. Not
well,
so much.
I mean, we're in Port-au-Prince.
In Port-au-Prince,
in
yeah.
Port-au-Prince.
Port-au-Prince,
okay, in Port-au-Prince, yeah.
Yeah. On the way, except at the top where the hotel was.
Right, and we were actually worked there in the top, but the golf course there was turned into a refugee camp because it was after the earthquake. Right. So we worked in that refugee camp that used to be. You couldn't see there was a golf course ever. Wow. But mushrooms, mushrooms are good. We also have done beekeeping projects also, but a lot is also growing vegetables, growing tomatoes in the off season. A lot of things we do. We help them do.
Have you done anything like with like I don't know if they actually do this anywhere, but like recycled food, like taking food and kind of like condensing it and sterilizing it and making it into. It's a little bit like what was that movie where they
Solvent Green?
Yeah, Solvent Green.
Look, people, there are some things that are very hard to do.
Yeah.
One is to like really change people's diets. People like to eat what they
like to eat,
and especially in the global South or whatever, they eat the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Very hard to like. We have Nepalis on our staff who, and the same thing in Zambia with different food, but they would rather eat dal bhat, which is basically rice and lentils, and some vegetables, twice a day, than once a day and have something totally different the other day. Right. They're not into variety. So one thing is hard to do. It's also very hard to change people's way of cooking. Like even if they're getting smoked out from the smoke and the thing, and you build them chimneys,
right?
They like the smoke.
Yeah, right.
They like the smell of smoke, and the women like to cook a little faster.
Yeah.
If they don't use a chimney, very hard to change certain things.
Wow.
So we try to work with what people like to do, what they do.
Like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump way back
and
just talk about. I know your sister's here and your brother's here, but when
2 sisters and a brother.
2 sisters, I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. How did this Zionist bug bite you, and where and when?
Well, first of all, my mom had lived here both as a child for a little while, for a few years, and then she came back and got her PhD here in chemistry from 50 to 54. And then she met my dad, who was here just for 2 weeks. They met on the boat. She was going back for a postdoc, and they met on the boat going back. And he was a refugee from Germany, so he didn't want to be a refugee again. He didn't want to come back. He didn't want to go to Israel. She was convinced that she was going to get him to come back. And so all our childhood, all we heard was, what am I doing in California? We should be in Israel. So that was, kind of background.
Yeah.
And then we were in Bnei Akiva, and it was a Zionist youth. Yes, Bnei Akiva in L.A.
I did it. Yeah.
And we came here with my parents when I was 12 for 2.5 months, made an impression. And then I kept coming back for a year, after high school, in the middle of college, after college. And from the first time I was here, I just, kind of fell in love with this place. And I think my brothers and sisters all of it, somehow we were
Yeah, you were
We were brainwashed.
brainwashed.
But not only
yeah,
brainwashed, it was really,
yeah.
There's
It was
something about this place.
positive love. Yeah,
I'm very worried about this place right now, but
yeah. Why? What are you worried about the judicial reforms?
Yeah, I'm worried about, sort of not only if it was just the judicial reforms, that would be one thing, but the judicial reforms and the politicization of the police that they want to do.
Oh, what do they want to do?
They want to make the minister in charge of the policies of the police and not the mafkal. And he's going to decide who they interrogate and everything they do. He's going to be the boss of the police. Not good.
Yeah.
And they want to take away public television. They want to defund Channel 11 Khan, which is really the only non tycoon owned television station. So
So what that makes me think of, I listened to one of your other interviews, and you seem to be on the side of, you had a very positive view of government, of the potential of government to do well by people.
Look, I don't know about government. Look, government, I'm not necessarily, I think there has to be much more emphasis on community, on smaller forms of governing, but I very much for people getting together for the common good. I mean, right now, the world is large, in many ways, is being governed by these huge corporations, which are also forms of social corporation, but they're also forms of of a social order, but they're just geared towards making money for the people that own stocks in it, and that's not. I don't think that's good.
Yeah, but over history, I think it seems that governments were always under, what I think of the Medicis, and they were always beholden to the wealthy people, and
I mean, look, I grew up in the '60s, right? '60s, and and in that the period between the wars, not between the wars, post-World War II, okay, the capitalism that was then was balanced by strong labor unions and by by politics and by people being connected. Like a lot of people were connected in different kinds of organizations and different things like that. Anyway, the difference between the highest salary and the lowest salary, the difference between the amount of money controlled by the 1% and the amount of money controlled by the 99%, it's huge. It's exponential.
There was a middle class then.
And it's a totally different thing. And the great advances that we've seen in medicine, for example, have all been because of public funding of basic science research. I mean, there are things that government can do if it's done right. Government can do for the common good, and not that's not what corporations do. Corporations do things to make money, and that's not the end all and be all. You can't eat money,
Right. Yeah, like the pharmaceutical companies are private. But it's true they get money from governments, but
no, they don't. I don't know if they get money from governments, but they I was at this in 2008. Shimon Peres made this big event. He was in charge of this big event for the 60th anniversary of the State of Israel. And he invited 10 Nobel Prize winners, Jewish Nobel Prize winners, to come and speak. Each had 10 minutes to speak. And there was this Nobel Prize winner from Stanford. Yeah. And he was saying what he said, a biologist. And he said that what he thought was most important was, first of all, what I said just now, that the breakthroughs came through public funding of basic science. And now he says with the pharmaceutical companies funding research. So if you had one research track that would lead to, say, a cure of cancer or an understanding of how environmental factors were causing cancer, and therefore you could eliminate them and there'd be no cancer. And another research track would say, no, we're going to develop pills that will keep you alive another 2 years. You have to take 5 a day, and then you'll die. He says that the decision will always be made by the pharmaceutical companies to pursue the second track of research. And decisions like that are made every single week in funding. So the question is, where do you want to go? Do you want to go towards, I also feel like that there has to be, yes, there's a place for markets. And I don't necessarily, I know there are problems with big government and socialism and so on and so forth. But there has to be a way to really have citizenship, not just to be consumers. Like what's happened in many Western countries is we've been moved from being citizens to being consumers. And in the end, that's alienating. In the end, that is, people say, like a lot of people, capitalists or whatever, they like to say, human beings are selfish. Human beings are selfish. That's why this, and I say, that's why this works. And I say, human beings are selfish, but the question is, what do they want? I'm selfish. I have nothing against selfishness, but I don't want, what I want most is not tons of money. I want to live fine. I want to live well. I want to be secure. I want love. I want respect. I want adventure. I want art. I want creativity. Those are the things that I want. And those are things that most people want if you really dig down into people. So the idea that we should run an entire society around making more and more and more money, and that's the goal of the society, I think is really wrong.
It's sad. Yeah. One thing I've thought of, since I started getting into Torah a bit, we say all the time in Shmones, we say koneh et hakol.
Koneh hakol, yeah.
Koneh hakol, which it translates literally as God buys everything.
So, but koneh doesn't mean buy. It means to create also.
Oh, it means to create. Okay.
Kaniti ish et Elokim. That's what Chava says. So she didn't mean she bought Cain. It meant that she created with him.
So when I got married the second time, there was a guy, one of her Haredi cousins was standing right below the chuppah, and he was saying, "Takoneota, takoneota," So, and I wasn't creating her.
No, now koned also has a meaning of a kinyan, kinyan.
Right, but it's a purchase thing. So I always thought that the thing about possession is like if you're buying things, like you consume with your eyes, and you consume with your mind. Also, you're living in the world. You're consuming the world. So, but it's true that it's all about a lot of living in Western reality. Certainly in America, is about buying with money and getting more and more. As they asked one of the billionaires, like, what does he want, and he said more. So it's the dopamine thing of getting more.
Well, I'm for more, but you can be more of a lot of things. It can be more Torah. It can be more dance. It can be more,
or even more goals and more difficulties
more love,
and struggles.
Whatever it is, it can be more. I'm not against more, but there of course the Torah is very much about limits on the power of property. So the whole society was an agricultural society, and yet lo timacheret haaretz letzmitut ki li kol haaretz ki gerim toshavim atem imadi. Mine is the God says you can't sell the land; it's mine, and you're just sojourners here. And one of my favorite psukim is in Mishpatim, where it's a whole thing where a poor man borrows something from a rich person, can't pay back the loan. Yeah. So the rich person takes his blanket as a collateral. So the Torah says you have to bring back the blanket every single night for him to sleep in. Why? So it says, Ki hiksuta leoro bamer yilbash. That's it. It's not even a question. It's clear that the basic human needs trump property ownership.
Right. There doesn't. Is there? I know also, but it's been a problem historically for the Jews. Like we had Shemitah, we had, or at least built into the system, we had Jubilee, but somehow we never actually managed to.
Shemitah we did. Shemitah we did.
Yeah.
When there's a historian, Gedalia Alon, he's a famous historian of the Second Temple period. That's where that street that Hartman is on is named after him, Gedalia Alon. So he argues, for example, that basically why did Hillel make the prose bowl of Shemitah?
Mm-hmm.
So he says that was after the Romans killed the B'nai B'Tera. The Romans basically killed this like 80 Rabbanim
Mm-hmm.
at a certain period because, according to him, they were trying to globalize. They were trying to create an economy that was global and take Judea out of its small community, economics, and that basically the Shemitah couldn't work unless there's a close community.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently the Shemitah did work sometimes.
Sometimes,
The
yeah.
Yovel never worked.
Yeah.
But it's more of an idea, a redemption.
Right. So, what do you see the redemption? Do you see a redemption, like in coming? Do you feel the redemption coming? I mean, even if distantly. I mean, hopefully, you feel the difficulties.
I believe in it. I believe that there has to be. I believe that human beings can really can develop and can grow and can do much more, evolve much more than we have. I really do believe that, and I believe that things there could be like leaps, quantum leaps in what we do.
Uh-huh.
I don't like to say I don't like to get on the Geula train.
No.
I'm feeling the Geula now.
Yeah, right.
Because we've been on that train a lot of times, and we can't. We don't know.
Well, we have how many years left? 220 or something until we finish the 6,000.
Yeah, but the 6,000 is it really? I don't know. It's not like exactly a derisa or something like that.
No, not at all.
We don't know. I don't feel like we know.
Luzzatto talks about. He says, like, and some guys from UC Irvine, some physicist says, yeah, the paradigm of time space has had its time, and Luzzatto says it's kind of like William Blake says, yeah, at the end of the 6,000 years, it all like rolls into a ball, and it's preserved. Like every moment of the 6,000 years is preserved, but we go into a different paradigm, and I don't know. You think in those terms. You're thinking of more here now, and
look. I mean, sometimes the world seems like it's in such a potentially catastrophic state that I begin to think, well, maybe Mashiach is coming, but I think we have to work for Mashiach. We have to work for some kind of a gula, like a redemptive leap for humanity, and we have to live like it can come, but we really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, as a Holocaust, I grew up with Holocaust survivors. My all the people grew up in the Orthodox community.
Your dad was trained as a doctor before he.
No, he came at 15, and then he was in 38. He got out in 38, and then he was in the U.S. Army and went to the medical school on like the GI.
Yeah, my dad too.
Holocaust. But the Holocaust, but in my class, most of the kids in like Orthodox day school had at least one parent, if not both, who were Holocaust survivors, Auschwitz survivors, all of that.
Yeah. So
I know that the worst can happen, I can't deny that. How can I deny that the worst can happen?
Right. But do you have a feeling, we're the religion that we claim ownership of is big into redemption, at the end. Right. So you may not be on the redemption train, but you must have some ideas about it, like what it will be, what will it look like. And I know I once got you a little bit upset because I told you that there was a thing in some Gemara that the poor will always be with us. And,
but it's not the Gemara, it's the Torah itself. It says within 8 psukim, there's two psukim. There's one that says Ki lo yichdal adal mikerav haaretz, or you do lo yichdal ani, something like that. Mikerav haaretz, poor will always be with us. And the other one says Efes ki lo yeh b'chayav yon. And
translate
Efes, no, because there will not be any poor with you. Mm-hmm. And what does Rashi say? Rashi says, isn't that a contradiction? He says, Kan kishosim ritzono shel makom, kan she'eno ritzono shel makom. The pasuk that says the poor will always be with us is when we don't listen to God.
Right.
And when we do listen to God, then the poor will not be with us because we'll be creating a great society, a good society. And there's many differences in there are, it's like when people sometimes like to say, this is not exactly about poverty, but people sometimes like to say, oh, well, this isn't really democracy anyway. And I can understand that, they'll say about the United States or about Israel or whatever, pointing to what you alluded to earlier, for example, that there's the Hon Shilton, there's the wealthy who influence things. And I, having been in places like Ethiopia under Mengistu and, Myanmar under the military junta and places like that, I can tell you there are places, and I was even in Russia during Brezhnev's time when I was really young. You can cut the fear with a knife in those places. And I always tell people, you can say whatever you want about not having a perfect democracy, but when you're in a place that really is not a democracy, that's a place where they knock on your door in the middle of the night and your wife never sees you again.
Right. So
so in the same way, there's also big differences in terms of poverty, in terms of, like Israel, thank God we have a public health system. Thank God.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty good one.
Which, yes.
And everyone has it. Even the refugees are part of it.
Really, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard from a couple of, they're high up doctors here saying that the Israel system is far superior to the American system, because everybody eventually gets care, even though sometimes it's slow. Not as slow as in Canada, not as not as difficult as in England, but eventually. And that the American system is crippled by what you spoke of before, the search for more money.
Right, and the search for not paying for things, because the insurance companies spend, I heard it's like a third of the amount of money spent in medicine in the United States is insurance companies spending money so as not to pay, like lawyers and all kinds of things.
Oh, really?
Like that. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. So I wanted to just ask about democracy, because democracy, as like we have in Hebrew a lot of words that are Greek in thoughts that are I just found out that Epicurus was Epicurus. Sure. Never knew that. So democracy is a Greek thing. Was it a Jewish thing? Is it a Jewish thing? The idea of voting, even in Greece, apparently it wasn't so weak. There were the demos and the plebes, right? So was there a democracy, or is it something that we've aspired to at any point, or is that something new that?
Yeah, I think first of all, you see clearly in Shmuel, right, where the people are pressing Shmuel to appoint a king, and he says no. He says we don't want a king, He says we don't want a king. We want to rule ourselves. And I think that also in the Gemara there isn't very much an idea of enosim. You don't make laws that the tzibur can't abide by them, that are not. Right. I mean, there's always a huge big give and take between sort of the organic kind of movements and customs of society, and even with even halacha. It's an amazing thing. When I was learning Gemara Shabbat about that. I mean, that's and I think that there's a rabbi named Jewish thinker. What was his name? I can't remember his name right now. But there's been a lot of writing about democracy and Judaism, and obviously it's not like there wasn't voting.
Yeah.
But I also think that there was definitely a rejection of the idea that somebody, an authority from above, is going to come and tell the people everything what they're going to do.
Yeah. And
I think the idea of human dignity, the idea of Tzelem Elokim, the idea of each person being a universe on his own, Bishvili Nivra Olam.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very, very deep in Judaism. I think that those ideas also influence the development of democracy.
Right. So how would you feel if we entered into a virtual world? If everybody, I just listened to another podcast of somebody saying that they have these chat AI
right.
that does all writing for you, like
I know.
elegant writing, and apparently now they'll create images for you, and eventually they'll be able to create actual objects, probably with 3D printers and stuff. So how would you feel if everybody was like talking about everybody a universe unto themselves, like if everybody has their own, like it talks about in Jewish, there's some Jewish thing about everybody having their own planet. Like if everybody is creating their own,
or 310 planets.
Really, 310?
Yeah, because it says le there's l'anchil le'ovav yesh. Now that's the pasuka. L'anchil le'ovav yesh, and then say each person, each tzaddik will have 310 olamot. No idea what that means, but I don't like the virtual reality stuff. I like real people, and I think the more, because I think the greatest gift in the world is life, and you can feel life in all kinds of different ways, and you want to feel more life, not less life. And I feel the more things are mechanized and mediated and so on and so forth, you often feel less life. I mean, prove it otherwise. I'll listen,
some people say that the whole purpose of technology is to remind us of our own native abilities. That whatever creativity we're through technology is actually stuff that we do on our own. And some people talk about us being in a synthetic universe of our own, that as simulations of our own creation.
I mean, there is a sense in which, because with our eyes process everything, all our senses, and we don't we don't have any direct. But I like to think that we do have direct. Somehow we do have direct knowledge and direct experience and so on. That stuff scares me. I like that's why I like the global South. I like Africa. I like Asia, because it's so.
You have a different feel there. I think in one of your things you felt, like you said, you feel the Shekhinah out in those places, like the presence of God in a more intimate and in a closer way.
Yeah.
Maybe also from nature, and maybe because the people themselves are closer.
I think the people themselves. I think that when people are, that their life is somehow, like I said, that it's not so mediated, and it's and also even people who are sort of day by day, they don't know what's going to happen. They don't know. That there is a beautiful aspect to that. I mean, I don't want to romanticize it too much, but there is something strong and beautiful.
And the thing, you have to go pretty soon. Right now. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. Your support helps us create more exciting content for you.